Hello, everyone, and welcome back in for another installment of the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. Tyler Henry joined here by Devin Hanney. We mentioned last week it was getting to be crunch time, but here in the final 2 weeks, Devin, I mean, these can really be make or break type weeks for your season. You've got teams that are on the outside looking in, trying to get a playoff spot. You've got teams that are trying to make sure they get home field advantage for a game, maybe two. And then you've got teams that know, and they're in a position right now, if you win out, you get home field for the entirety of the playoffs. There is a lot to play for in the last 2 weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, your vision is definitely splitting in different places right now, right? I mean, you're taking care of what you can control, your controllables, so to speak, but you're also looking at some competition. You're looking at not only wins and losses, but you're looking at point differentials, especially in the smaller classes. Those points can come in and make the difference of not only if you're going to get home field advantage for the first round or two of the playoffs, but if you make the playoffs. Remember, everybody will get a Week 9 game. It's just some of those teams, that game won't really matter, and they won't have a chance to go to Week 10.
And that's the thing, too, right? Not only do you have to go play one of the top teams in the state in that case, but you also have to travel to go play that game. It's not like you get to go play it at home, and depending on the classification, that can be quite the trek. As always, we begin by taking a look back at the scores from last week. Salina Central, who we'll talk more about in just a moment, won their game with Andover Central 23-13. Again, that was last Friday. Salina South came close but fell to Goddard 34-27. Abilene, how about the Cowboys? A 3-0 win over Augusta, Devin. They won by a single field goal. Again, just crazy stuff out of the Cowboys. No touchdowns, still found a way to get the job done.
You don't ever really expect that out of high school football at any level, but then Abilene goes and does it, and you're just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. Again, it's just any team in the NCKL can just do something weird like that on any given night. But give Abilene's defense especially credit. Put a special team score in there, pack it up, take it home.
100%. You move on, you keep it with the NCKL. You've got Wamego defeating Chapman 55-24. Southeast of Saline handled their business 52-16 against Hillsboro. Ellsworth did the same, 42-21 over Halstead. Sacred Heart got a 44-6 win over Bennington. We thought they would. We knew they were going to come in as favorites in that game. Devin, not only do they handle their business, but like we said, they have put themselves on the path now to being district champions and potentially getting 2 home playoff games. That could be big for the Knights.
Big game coming up a week from tonight for Sacred Heart when they play Republic County. Just like last week against Bennington, I don't anticipate they'll have any trouble tonight against Harrington at home. Republic County, though, in that district, they have a little bit tougher road. Actually, they have a lot of bit tougher road as they will play Valley Heights tonight, and then they will have that clash with Sacred Heart next week. So tonight, a tune-up for Sacred Heart, probably against the Railers of Harrington. Then they'll see the Buffaloes next week. That should be a heck of a game for a Week 8 next week.
The last result on our 11-man scoreboard was one that left me a little bit disappointed. It was a Minneapolis team that I thought might have had a chance to go in and make some noise against a Beloit squad that has looked a little bit down this year. That did not happen. 54-6 was the final. Beloit hands the Lions a thrashing. And boy, I don't know about you, Devin, but that one kind of surprised me a little bit.
The clash of the teams that get better and better and better every single year as they go along. Minneapolis does this usually. Beloit always does this, where they just kind of start out and they're feeling their way through. I expected them to do that more this year than what they have in years past. Now, give Beloit credit. Last year, they took a really tough loss in Week 3 against Southeast of Saline, came back and nearly knocked Southeast out of the playoffs last year. We all know the story there. Southeast with a walk-off touchdown at the end. But Beloit this year with a freshman quarterback, I thought they were going to have to kind of revamp everything that they've done, and they've done that. They have a really good running back, but now they have a passing game to go with it. They have a lot of skill players back. I think this Beloit team might make some noise in the playoffs in Class 2A.
I was blessed personally with maybe one of the best games of the week last week. It was El Saline at home against Little River. That's the second-ranked, undefeated Little River Redskins. El Saline down late, comes back. They score 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion, and they get a dramatic 22-20 victory. The first loss of the year for Little River, and that vaults El Saline into the ranked standings this week. Also, Solomon, my goodness, 74-28 against Gossel. You like offense? That was the game for you. And rounding out our scores from last week, Teskett defeats Otis Bison 54-6. We did have one game last night. This is now from this week. Salina Central and Salina South both scheduled to play at home. Boy, it was a tough one for the Mustangs. They fall to a really good Andover team, 41-20 or 48-21. But Devin, it's important to remember that Andover squad's only 2 losses are against 2 of the best teams in the state.
And these games are all about momentum. you have to be nearly at the top of your game, almost perfect to win these games. And I'm speaking of both teams, Andover and Central last night. It was the Mustangs, though, that just had some negative mojo, had a couple of mistakes early on. It just seemed like they never recovered from that last night. And Andover, give them credit. They come into Salina Stadium, they get the win.
We got a full slate of games coming up here tonight. Salina South will inherit Salina Stadium tonight. They'll be the home team with their best chance to pick up a win this year against Campus. Abilene is also at home. They take on El Dorado tonight, and Chapman will be on the road at Marysville. Southeast of Saline is also on the road. They'll travel to take on the Halstead Dragons. Ellsworth will travel to take on Beloit. Sacred Heart is home for their homecoming game tonight as they play Harrington, and Minneapolis will also be at home against Russell. Meanwhile, in 8-man, El Saline is on the road at Gossel. Solomon is at home to take on Canton Galva, and Tesket, boy, they tried their best to find a game this week, Devin, but just could not find anybody to replace Chase. Remember, Chase forfeited their entire season due to a lack of players down in 6-man, so mark it down as a 1-0 forfeit victory for Tesket this week over Chase.
I feel horrible for the Tesket Trojans. This is the second time around they've tried to get Chase into their schedule and play them. Remember, last time this happened, like on a Thursday evening, from what I understand, they ended up going to play then undefeated Ingalls. They tried and tried and tried. They actually had 2 weeks' notice this time to try to get another opponent in there. And on their homecoming tonight, they will not have a football game. They'll have festivities, from what I understand, still in town, but no game this week for the Tesket Trojans.
Got plenty of good games from this week's slate, but a couple of non-broadcast games that I want to talk with you about just very briefly, and they both come from either the new NCAA or the old NCAA. Let's start with Ellsworth on the road at Beloit. We saw a Minneapolis team that we thought might have had a chance. Ellsworth, I think, is playing on a different level than Minneapolis, but that could be a really fun game down at Beloit tonight.
It can be. Ellsworth's going to have to find somewhat of evidence of a passing game against Beloit. Beloit's big up front, and they can clog those holes initially that Tucker Goss has been running through, and just kind of the attack of the Bearcats. Couple of difficult weeks, though, for Ellsworth, and they'll get to kind of get their playoff medal going early. They play Beloit tonight, then they turn around and they play Southeast of Saline and Gypsum next week.
The other game comes between a current NCAA team in Minneapolis, we talked about them just a moment ago, and a Russell Bronco team that, because they're not in the NCAA, I know you and I don't pay as close of attention to what they're doing. They are 6-1 or 5-1 coming into this week 6 game. For Minneapolis, it feels pivotal that they find a way to go out and kind of maintain momentum. They're at 500 right now. That could be an interesting matchup between the Broncos and the Lions.
From a person in myself that watches the NCAA every single week, I'm interested in this game because a couple of years ago, as you said, Russell packed their bags and they left the NCAA. I don't know why exactly. Some just kind of clutter flying around. They just felt like they couldn't compete anymore. Well, here they are, 5-1 in football, right? And you have a Minneapolis team that's kind of middle of the road. They're probably, the fourth best team in the NCAA. That I think that's kind of proven itself this year. I'm interested to see how the Lions and the Broncos go at it here tonight. This will be an interesting outcome for me to watch.
So that's a look at last week's finals and this week's full slate. We'll step away, but when we come back, we'll talk with head coach Christien Ozores of the Salina South Cougars and get his thoughts on our game of the week tonight as Salina South hosts the Campus Colts. That conversation when we return. This is the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show presented by Kansas Wesleyan University. Back here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show as we get you ready for our Salina Regional Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Game of the Week. It's presented tonight by Kelly Kitchener at Shelter Insurance, and it should be a good one. Salina South looking for their first win of the year. Boy, they have been so close, and they'll have a great chance to take down the Campus Colts for a second straight year. Earlier this week, we had a chance to chat with head coach Christien Ozores and get his thoughts on that game. Let's go ahead and hear from Coach Ozores. So I know the results on the scoreboard, maybe haven't been what you've wanted them to be, but every week, I see a South team that I haven't seen in years around here. How proud have you been of the guys and just the work that they've put in to improve this program?
Yeah, no, definitely proud of our effort and our preparation and just our overall, the kids staying bought in. It's tough. We've lost 4 games within, 10 points or less, and we're really probably 3 or 4 plays away from being, 2-4 or even 3-3. And so it's tough. We're still learning how to finish. That's the biggest thing. Just kind of played 4 quarters. But the kids are doing a great job staying locked in. Still had a really good week of practice this week, so that needs to continue as we finish out the year.
Well, and before we dig too deep into this year's team, I was curious, where do you feel like you've seen the program and maybe even some of the guys take the biggest leap from last year to this year?
I think just the overall physicality standpoint, that's been something that I've been really pleased with. I think we've not only attacked a lot of people, but we've been really physical, and I think that that helped. That a lot of these guys last year they played varsity football, and they got after it in the weight room this offseason, and so most of the time we've been probably the more physical team on Friday night, which is awesome to see. And so that needs to continue going on until we hit the playoffs.
On a smaller scale, but perhaps more importantly, where do you feel like you've seen the biggest improvements in your team from week 1 to now?
I think overall, it's just our speed and just playing faster, both offensively and defensively. It's got beginning of the year, we couldn't really go too much tempo offensively, especially with a sophomore quarterback. We wanted to make sure he was, settled in. And then defensively, same thing. We're just playing a lot faster. We're getting our reads quicker, getting a line faster. We're simplifying things, and our defensive staff's doing a great job with that as well. And yeah, I just think the overall speed of the game's getting slower. And we're playing faster, and so I think that's helping us, compete in a lot of these games, and giving us a shot, like we've had a lot of these, especially these past couple weeks.
Obviously, a lot of positives to look at, but at the same time, what are the biggest areas where you feel like you still need to see your team kind of tighten things up to turn some of these close losses into close wins?
I think it's just finishing games, finding ways to make plays at the end of the game. We got to continue to limit turnovers. We've done a pretty good job of that this year, but we got to continue to take care of the football. Can't just, throw a pick up, just to throw a pick. Got to make sure defensively, when it's, 4th and 10, we got to go make a play. We got to go make a play on the ball and, finish games. And, and our kids have done a really good job practicing and preparing and, getting in the right spots. And they're doing a good job there. We just got to go finish and make those game-winning plays.
For a sophomore, Izzy Tellez looks cool and composed for the most part. He doesn't seem to make a lot of mistakes. How have you seen him develop most throughout the season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with him is just kind of, not just simple in it, but like him understanding too, he's just the point guard of the offense. He just needs to find, dink and dump, get it to our guys out in space, get us in line, make sure our motions are good, make sure that, the personnel grouping's right. And he's done a good job, because it's not easy what we do, especially with some of the competition that we've played. We can't just run 5 or 6 plays the whole game and expect to win. We got to not be complicated, but we got to give different looks, and we got to mix up personnel groupings to stay fresh on the field. And so he does a really good job managing that, and he's just continuing to get better and better. That's good. And like last week, I thought he had a good game. We dropped a few balls that we probably should have caught, and he still, threw for over 270. And it wasn't even a great game, and he still, put up really good numbers. And so we need to, make sure that he gets comfortable and, continues to dish it out the rock to our guys.
At least from a bird's eye view, the defense certainly improved, but, maybe hasn't been up to the standard that you'd like. Where can that group still grow a little more here down the stretch?
I think just finishing games, we've improved so much defensively, as far as especially tackling and like creating turnovers. I think we've had 7 interceptions, multiple games with multiple sacks. That was stuff that we didn't do last year, but we kind of broke down the numbers. We've given up, I think it's 79 less points than the first 6 weeks from last year, and so that's a big improvement. So our defense staff, led by Coach Casey, has done a great job, making sure that we're tackling, making sure that we're kind of creating havoc, and it's just about finishing plays. We've faced some really good offenses too, and some really good, high-level skill guys, and so just finding different ways to limit those guys from making plays.
Yeah, I know we talked about it a little bit before the season started. Your schedule, it is just a murderer's row in the ABCTL1. You guys have been very close to some very good teams. At the same time, you get a campus team this week that you guys were able to knock off last week. Does it feel good to come into a game? I don't know if you would use the word favorites, but, certainly knowing that you guys should probably take care of business and get a win this week.
Yeah, no, we just need to make sure that we're doing our job. We always have a word of the week, and the word of the week this week is just maturity. We got to be mature going through our business this week. Yes, we're probably the better team on paper and on film, but that doesn't matter. we still got to have a really good practice. Still have to have really good prep work, really good film work, and making sure that we're doing our job, because they're going to come and play hard on Friday. This is kind of their, one shot to win a game, and so we need to, take care of our business. And then, once the playoff comes, we feel very confident in what we have, and I think nobody's probably going to want to see us on the 5A West side.
Absolutely. Well, and when you have a chance to scout campus on film, what are the things that stand out to you just about the way that they play football?
Well, a really talented running back that transferred in, and he runs hard. That's good. He gets them going offensively. And then defensively, they really fly around. They're really fast. They have a lot of skill guys out there. They're kind of having 5 or 6 DBs on the field, and so those guys play really fast. It's hard to run sideline to sideline on them, and they're going to get in your face and dare you to beat them over the top. And so we got to make sure that we can make explosive plays, but also still establish a run game inside.
You kind of alluded to the run game offensively for the Colts. What are some things that lead to their offensive success when they're able to do the things they want to do?
Yeah, they do a good job of just trying to stay on schedule, especially with their running back. They try to get him going early. They'll give him the ball outside, they'll give him the ball inside, they'll direct snap it to him, and they'll go a lot of wildcat stuff, a double tight package. And so we got to make sure that we slow him down, and then put them in passing situations to where they can't get him the ball as easy.
Kind of on the flip side, defensively, you mentioned the speed that campus has. What are some of the challenges defensively that they can present in offense when they're on?
They do a good job of creating turnovers. I know they haven't played in a lot of close games this year, but they have forced turnovers. They've had some interceptions. They do a good job of, hopping on fumbles and creating some fumbles, because those guys do fly around. And so, yeah, we got to make sure that we take care of the football, and then also, if they're going to play up, we got to be able to make explosive plays behind. And so just kind of taking what they give us.
Obviously, you have to respect any opponent, especially in the ABCTL. But at the same time, this is a campus program that's really struggled over the last several years. Is there anything that you see that, maybe they struggle with that you feel like your guys might be able to take advantage of in a game like this?
I know they kind of seemed a little bit dinged up, and so they're going to have a few young guys in. I know they have like a freshman corner that started last week. They have a few, they're probably starting 7 or 8 sophomores. And so, just that youth, hopefully we can take advantage of that with our experience, but they're still going to play hard. They're a 6A high school with 2,000 kids in the building. And so this isn't, like a small town that just doesn't have talent. It's a 6A high school. They have kids in the building. And they have athletes on the team that are still going to play hard and compete.
Well, and last thing for you here, Coach, we ask every coach every week, but if you have to boil it down into your top couple of points here, what are your biggest keys to the game to get that first win and kind of start that momentum rolling for South?
Yeah, we got to get them in pass situations. We got to stop the run, especially their running back, and then we have to take care of the football offensively and finish with points. We can't have what we did last week, drive it down and then get caught in the red zone and get some holding penalties or offsides, whatever it is. We got to play penalty free and play fast.
Once again, that was Christien Ozores, head coach of the Salina South Cougars. His team taking on campus tonight. That is our game of the week. It's presented this week by Kelly Kitchener at Shelter Insurance. We will step away. When we come back, we'll preview all 3 matchups that you can tune in for tonight across our Salina Post Sports Network. That is next. This is the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. It's brought to you by Kansas Wesleyan University. Welcome back in here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show presented by Kansas Wesleyan University. Tyler Henry joined here by Devin Hanney, getting you ready for our broadcast coverage throughout the course of the weekend. And we're actually going to begin with Saturday's game. Kansas Wesleyan will be back in action following the bye week, and Devin, they needed it. You look at that game, they lost to a nationally ranked Evangel team on the road, 7-6. They were right there, but they were without their starting quarterback, starting running back, starting left tackle, and second best wide receiver. Now the Coyotes have had a week to rest up and get healthy, and they will travel to Leavenworth to take on St. Mary. Pregame begins at noon, kickoff at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Important for the Coyotes to get back on the winning side, right? They've had a couple of weeks now to kind of move some things around according to personnel, according to whoever is available. We all know injuries happen. It just depends on how you respond and how you react to them. I'll be interesting to see what the Coyotes do. Should come home with a road win, though, I think, and just kind of move on through their season. That bye week, I think, came for them at a really good time last weekend.
Yeah, it certainly did. A St. Mary team is no pushover, by the way. They beat Tabor on their best day, but they lost to Bethany on their worst day. Just kind of a tough team to nail down at this point in the season. Tonight, we've got 3 great games for you on our Salina Post Sports Network. You can check it out on Salina Post or on our Salina Post YouTube page. Let's start with Sacred Heart because they are on a roll. They are on their first 4-game winning streak, Devin, since back in 2013. This is a team that has picked things up dramatically, and they should be in for another win tonight. They play a Harrington team that has not won a game since 2023. Realistically, this should be a walk-through win for the Knights to build momentum ahead of a big one next week.
Yeah, and a big one at home for Sacred Heart to just kind of, like we said, polish things up, get things ready for next week. The playoffs for the Knights start next week. I mean, it will be a Republic County team coming in, maybe a one-loss Republic County team that they'll get to play next week in Belleville, and then you just go right into the playoffs. So a tune-up tonight. I don't anticipate any problems, though, for Sacred Heart running that winning streak up to 5.
Shouldn't be. We've also got a big one on our game of the week. That's brought to you by Kelly Kitchener at Shelter Insurance this week. Devin, we got to talk about the Salina South Cougars. They are probably, and I feel confident saying this, the best winless team in the state of Kansas. Last year, they played the same slate of opponents. You look at it, it's brutal. Salina Central, Maize South, Derby, Hutch, Valley Center, and Goddard. Those teams this year have a combined record of 25-11, and they have improved their result despite being 0-6 in those games by 173 points. That included three one-score losses. This team is right there. You can see how close they are to turning the corner, and tonight against Campus, they have a chance to do just that.
We get a ton of scores coming to our phones every Friday, and the score I always kind of anxiously look for on the update is Salina South. And it just seems like at the end of the night, I get the final for the Cougars, and my reaction is always, oh, shoot. They're just right there. They're right on the doorstep. I can't wait to see what they do tonight at Salina Stadium. You should have a good one there. Hopefully the Cougars get a win. Those kids sure deserve it. The work they've been putting in, the improvement that they've shown, they need one in the left side of the win column.
And how fun would it be, right? I mean, you've seen the rebound with Salina Central, who had a number of hard years, but they bring in Coach Sandbo. All of a sudden, they're one of the last undefeated teams left in the state. To get South back to that point, renew that rivalry, and have 2 teams of that caliber competing in Salina, I think that's what everybody wants, whether you're a fan of the green and gold or the maroon and white.
Yeah, and it's infectious, right? We talk about the area and how Salina is with football. It is, you look around and it's like Salina Central's doing really well right now. They have 1 loss. El Saline's doing well. They have 1 loss. Southeast of Saline's undefeated. You just kind of look around and you say, okay, what are those teams doing that we need to do better or we can maybe implement in our weekly planning? And I'm sure the work has begun. As you said, you always expect the best improvement with a new head coach from year 1 to year 2, and I think we're seeing that. They just need to win. I mean, that's the bottom line now. They need to win tonight.
Our final game that you can tune in for live video coverage for will be between Southeast of Saline and Halstead. Devin, it's an undefeated SES team on the, not even the revenge tour, just on the run it back tour, trying to defend their state championship game. And the crazy thing is, right, if they make it to the state title game, they're going to play 13 games this season, which means not only are they just over halfway done with their schedule, but after tonight, they might not play another game on the road until the state championship game.
A couple of things happened in the spectrum of the state last week. St. Thomas Aquinas went across the border into Missouri and played Rockhurst, and they lost. So the 2 teams right now with the longest winning streak overall, Southeast of Saline has the longest winning streak in the regular season, but when you take in playoffs, the 2 teams that have the longest winning streak overall right now, coming into tonight, it sits at 19 games, is Southeast of Saline and Andale. Those are the only 2 teams in 11-man that have a 19-game winning streak. That victory, 52-16 over Hillsboro last week, came at a price for Southeast of Saline. They are banged up right now. I don't think it's any secret at this point. They lost senior Gannon Jacobson, who not only is their quarterback, he is also a very good defensive player, kind of the last line of defense in their secondary as their lone safety in a lot of sets. They will miss him. They are banged up, though, other than that. There are a lot of game-time decisions talking to Coach Gebhardt that we'll see here in a few minutes if these guys are going to hit the field or not, but I expect 2 to 5 starters out tonight for Southeast of Saline. Southeast is still right there, though. Coach Gebhardt had an interesting quote to us this weekend, and it was about the quarterback spot. He said, if we don't win a state title this year, it's not because of Tiernan Potocik. They have supreme confidence in Tiernan Potocik. He is a coach's kid. He has been groomed to be the starting quarterback at Southeast of Saline, whether that be last year, this year, or next year as a senior. He is ready for this moment. Southeast of Saline was up 14-0 when Tiernan Potocik came in the game last week. He ran that score to 44-0. No problems there with Tiernan. Right now, it's the supporting cast that needs to get healthy. In Class 2A, you have 2 undefeated teams in the West. Right now with Hoisington and Southeast of Saline. In the East, it's Nemaha Central and Osage City.
And we actually got an interesting note, or at least I got an interesting note. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to talk this over with him or not, but conversations have been had between people at Southeast of Saline and Keisha officials about tie-breaking procedures and whatnot. And we do now have confirmation that if Hoisington and Southeast win out, 8-0 is better than 7-0. That coin flip will not determine that. So for Southeast, your destiny and home field playoff advantage in the West is still in your own hands, which is nice. But it also leads you to wonder, if you were Hoisington, tough call to not try and finish that game against Scott City earlier this year. That might end up costing the Cardinals.
Yeah, and for Southeast of Saline, that's huge too, because it's something that they haven't done before. They had home field advantage last year. They just couldn't play at home because their field was such a mess. They played those games at Kansas Wesleyan. They actually get to play at home now this year. They have legitimate home field advantage on Southeast of Saline's campus.
One quick question, and then we do have to wrap things up, but I was curious, in the entire time that Southeast has been making these deep playoff runs, have they ever been eliminated at home?
Yes. That was one of the best Southeast of Saline's defenses to ever hit the field. 2021, they lost to Andale.
That's right. Okay, fair enough.
But again, that comes with a big, huge asterisk, too. I mean, you lost to Andale.
You lost to arguably the greatest high school football dynasty in the last decade, maybe longer.
But that's the company the Southeast is living in right now.
It certainly is. Well, that is the look at all 3 games that you can tune in for tonight. Also, don't forget, tomorrow afternoon, it's a 1 o'clock kick for Kansas Wesleyan in Leavenworth against St. Mary. That'll do it for us, but coming up next, it's the Southeast of Saline pregame show as we get you a full look at their matchup with Halstead. That is right around the corner. This has been the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. It's brought to you by Kansas Wesleyan University.